Ooh, hello there, friends. How you guys doing? I had an amazing day, man. Let me tell you guys, absolutely perfect morning. It was, aesthetic as all heck. I'm out for my morning run. There's literally fog as far as the eye can see, and it's the middle of heckin' April. It's crazy to think. It was just majestic out there early in the morning. But now, I've had my brekkie fast, done with my morning routine, got me some green tea here with me. That's good stuff, man. I'm trying to cut back on the amount of coffee I ingest just because it's probably not the goodest for me. Probably a decent idea. I don't know. It might be all a waste of energy, but it's still an idea nonetheless. I'm just prepping this stuff because I have a lot of things to Hyalk, and we have a lot of things to talk about today. If you guys are aware or not, doesn't matter either way. It's perfectly fine, but there's been drama afoot. There's drama, and let me tell you, like any cold-blooded American Jewish reptile zombie, I enjoy me some drama. Sadly, this is kind of basic drama, but I figured we could analyze it, at least have a look-see at it, and look at the greater implications, because, as far as the whole situation goes, it boils down to, one of those basic he said, she said sort of, no, persecution, all of that. You get the picture. Intrinsically, it's not the most interesting thing, but how we got to this point, I think, is the interesting bit about it, and what I think at least has some intrinsic value to discuss. So let's get right on it. So one of the more popular, or actually the most popular, I believe, RuneScape streamer. I don't watch streams. I don't have time. Maybe in the future I will, but I've seen clips of him, and he's a really entertaining guy. Like, obviously deserves everything, all the success he's gotten. Not fanboying, but but I am about to also call out some things as far as I see them, but it is what it are. But yeah, so he basically received a ban recently. If you haven't heard, I'm pretty sure everyone in the community has heard. There's like riots going on in Falador, like you do, And so what's happening behind this? So there's some couple that's e-dating, and related to drama, I believe there's some female like staker slower that used to be, being into that community, and then created some sort of deathmatch gambling thing. And like, I'll go into gambling in a little bit, but I personally would advise against it, just as a general rule in life and everything else. But as far as what's happening, it's a tale as old as time in essence. It's basically some woman using her, SMV, we'll call it, to acquire a position of privilege, and then exploiting that for her own personal gain, in this case financial. So what are the symptoms that lead up to this? So we have someone that's probably a bad boy. Like, let's be clear here. From what I understand, Odablock has a history of real-world trading. That's fine. And, I'm pretty sure anyone that's ever been decent at a video game at some point has done at least something that was real-world tradey. Like me, I boosted WoW Arena when I was in my 20s. Not ashamed. Would do it again. Everyone's done bad things and for money on the internet. Now, is that good for the game integrity? Is it what you should be doing? No, but at the same time, I had college debts to pay. I paid for my university through it, so, it is what it is. Now, was that worth it? Maybe, maybe not. I would recommend against university, especially these days. Back when I went, it was getting bad, and nowadays it's just completely untenable. So, you can have whatever opinions you want about that, but that's out of the scope of this video. In this video, we're talking about the drama. So, we have some girl that's real-world trading. She has an OnlyFans account, or what have you. I'm not sure if it's exactly OnlyFans or what, but she is offering, lewd content in exchange for some sort of financial gain, either gold she's turning into real-life money or something else. So she's basically sexual grifting. Let's call it out what it is. And so I watched Otoblock's video about it, actually, which is why I'm commenting on this, and he said a few interesting things, right? So for one, I don't believe he's completely innocent as far as that character goes. Usually, if you look at that image macro everyone's done, where the like stages of grief, we've got acceptance as the final one, and it's pretty clear he's at the bargaining stage of grief. Well, I might have done something bad on this other character, but on this character I did not. And now that might be actually factually true. I would just be surprised if that was the actual truth of the matter. At least from what I look at it, I see is he's probably guilty of what they're accusing him of. Now, is that a malicious prosecution and over-prosecution on their part? I would also agree. There's no statute of limitations. Jagex makes the rules, but, a permaban for this I think is unacceptable. Rolling back the EXP he received from this during that period, and, a temp ban I think is much more accurate punishment for something like this in any sort of video game, but, you can make up your own opinion. I fell. No. Yeah, we have a lot of high alkene to do today. I really shouldn't be bothering with this. I should go do other things, like I just got this 70 prayer so I can do a bunch of other stuff. I'm inches away from 100 combat, which unlocks like 2 elite diaries that I can get accomplished. Can I actually do Western Provinces elite? I know I can do Karamja elite when I finish this, but can I do Western Provinces elite? Yeah, and yeah. Oh no, I can't. Not for a while. But yeah, I can do at least the hard and get Elite Void. Anyways, back on topic before I get lost. I get lost easily. So anyways, I don't believe, for instance, just from the way he's talking about it and his ideas about it, I don't believe him. I think he's going through the stages of grief, and I think this is just the bargaining stage when he says, I did bad things on the other account, but I did nothing on the other account. Probably not. And I mean, it shouldn't be prosecuted to this extent anyways, I don't think. But one other interesting thing he said, besides just the, sort of, at least in my opinion, admission of guilt, you can take whatever opinion you want on it, but I would not be surprised if proof comes out that he did in fact do it. Or if Jagex is smart, they're just not going to touch this with a 1,000-foot pole, deal with it internally like most companies do. And so let's set the stage, though, for why this is happening and the greater societal implications, because there are lessons we can learn and things we can understand from a situation like this that go way beyond just how boring and tepid this particular piece of drama is. I don't think it's anything all that interesting. It's your standard fare, only friends content creator, using and weaponizing politics, basically, between the sexes against each other, right? Very basic. And it's just a grift. And it always is. Spoilers. But let's go into that. So, I don't know if you guys can hear, but there's like a puppy dog barking outside. It must be new. One of the neighbors got one. I need to go and stalk and interact with it, at least sometime soon. If it is free. It might be pleasant to be around, and maybe it won't bark so much if someone shows it some kindness. I'll bring it something to eat. But that's for later. For now, let's get back on topic, because my schizo brain is going off on a million tangents, because there's a lot of things I want to talk about. But anyways, let's set the scene. So we have a gambling ring in a video game, and a real world trading ring in a video game. This happens pretty much always, no matter what. Like, this is part and parcel of gaming on the internet. It's been around since as long as I can remember. Like, the first time I ever encountered like some sort of real world trading scenario in a video game was like in 1998 in Diablo 2, So that's 25 years ago. Like, it's been a part of gaming for as long as I can remember, and probably as long as like multiplayer or online games were a thing. As long as there was a way to exchange currency for doing things in a video game, people have been, as far as I'm concerned. And every video game has it, and the reason we know so much about RuneScapes as opposed to like all the hidden networks that exist in the other video games is merely just because, of the ORS community and how good it is, in a sense. Like, the community makes this game. I think communities make every game, but in old school RuneScape in particular, because of how open and just how the whole voting system and the power to the people aspects of it, it really is unique in the gaming world, and why I personally really enjoy it. And also, if you look at Skitzo Rant number 2, why I'm so afraid of the future of it, because the values it's currently adopting are incompatible with what makes the game great. But, that's another topic that I've already covered before. You can watch Skitzo Rant 2 if you want my opinion about that. So, We have, you know, the seedy underbelly of the video game, and there's a seedy underbelly of every video game. This isn't an insult against old school RuneScape, as I've stated before. Name a video game that's an MMO, I will find you the seedy underbelly and, you know, go into it. I'm not actually going to do that, but, you know, trust me on that one. I hope you can accept that a priori. If not, you know, I can't interact with you anyways through a video format. Maybe when I'm live streaming post 28th, we'll see. But anyways. So that's one element of it. So that's the scenery of how we've organized, or how we have a gambling ring in a video game, or a real world trading ring, right? It happens. It's ubiquitous. So what about the characters involved? So we have Odablock, so let's look at his character. Probably your standard anti-hero, I would say, in this particular scenario, right? You know, guy who's done wrong in the past, may have wisened up, may, you know, supreme patriarch punished sort of ordeal, certainly. And, you know, I've also heard of some controversy where he said some anti-trans things, rightly based and red-pilled, by the way. Big approve, like him for that one. Based, as one would say. So I like the guy, even if I do think he has some culpability in this. And again, as someone who has real-world traded in the past in World of Warcraft, on an account that still is not banned, by the way, decades later, still with all the old PvP achievements and all of that, you know, I can completely relate. You know, I don't care about it so much. It happens in every video game. Everyone does it who's anywhere near decently good at a video game. If you've been at the high level, you've had the offer before, and you've probably done something. You could argue that that streaming and like YouTube, for instance, is real world trading because you're monetizing the video game in a sense as well. You're like making a guide and then getting views on it on YouTube is real world trading. Then to you, if you're like a purist, if we're going to go down the purity spiral, no, it's not good for the video games that these things happen, but you have to take the bad with the good. If everything was just good, then it'd be very boring. So trust me, you don't want to change this, and you can't, even if you wanted to. But yeah. So let's look at the other heroes. So we have Stella, which is just your typical ethot, very boring, you know, content for money, out for, you know, just a grift, out for it, using her, you know, SMV to acquire a simp. And now with that, let's talk about the final character, which is this random mod. We'll call him a Discord moderator, just to be fair. Maybe a Reddit mod, yeah, let's call him a Reddit moderator. I think that's an appropriate title. We'll call him Reddit mod, whatever his name is, I don't care. So just from looking at this person, you can tell that, you know, I looked through his tweet history. I don't use Twitter, but I read through it and, you know, did a little bit of research on the guy just because. And he seems like your standard, like, left-leaning, you know, sort of simpy type, you know, respect the womans and all of that. And so how do these social situations develop where things like this can arise, where this problem actually can begin? And the answer is, it's in the fact that all women in video games are grifting, period. There is no female who you know is a female in any MMO that is not grifting in some form or another. Now, that's quite the statement to make, I understand. You know, people are already raging at me, I'm sure, in your chairs. You're like, well, I know, you know, XYZ, and yes, certainly, I've encountered women in video games that I didn't think were grifting either, and they probably weren't. You know how I know? Because I didn't know they were a female until we got on voice to Arena or something. You know, if you know she's a female, odds are she is grifting. If it comes out, you know, accidentally or as something else, then she's probably not grifting. Now, why are all females grifting in any video game? If you were born in the 80s, 90s, if you've grown up before video games hit the mainstream, you will know that video games used to be for losers. Like, unequivocally, women would call you a loser if you played video games. They would have nothing to do with you. They hate video games, and they hate people that play video games. Just, let's come out and say it. This is true for virtually all females. You know, there might be a few that have, like, mental issues, but let's just say the vast majority of women feel that way about people that play video games and video games in general. That's just how it be. You can lament this, you can cry about this, but at the end of the day, especially us growing up back then, you know, we could tell that there was a certain there's like an image macro that went around about, you know, the Mario scoreboard, and it has, you know, all the years, and then it would be comments from the average woman, like, look at this X and his video games, look at this nerd in his video game, look at this whatever. Now people would say I sell in his video games. It's the same sort of jive, if you can catch my drift. It's derisive basically because video games are for like man children and are, the basic premise. And that has not changed. Let's be clear here. Video games, for the most part, do not appeal to women. So why would a woman be involved in a video game? Why would a woman be involved in other male-dominated spaces and demand inclusion and demand that, video games adopt to them, which is the way that image macro changes over time. So women infiltrate the community, and then the community then has to change to accommodate them, and then through changing to accommodate them, they can monetize or, gain some sort of social or other advantages from being involved in that community. Women are involved in video games because there are social incentives and advantages for them being involved in those video games. If you've ever been in a WoW guild, for instance, the Soul E-Girl, it commands an amazing amount of attention and can warp the dynamics of friendships, and things stop being about the video game and start being about the girl if you've ever been around them long enough. And that's the exact same forces that are at work here. Stella is probably a very intelligent person and has monetized, in essence, that SMV and the difference in that, and the fact that females that play video games are still, to this day, quite the limited resource, especially ones that are at a high enough level in a video game to be involved in, like, staking or whatever sort of thing she is doing. Like, I don't gamble, it's horrible, and I can talk about that afterwards, but women, period, do not like this kind of stuff, and if they're involved with it, keep a large distance, be fully aware that they are probably in some way, shape, or another not actually interested in the game and more interested in the social aspects of the game. Now, that's a horrible thing to say, but it's just factually accurate. It would be like if you've seen these guys that are like feminists, it's the exact same jive. Like, they don't actually believe the trife that's coming out of their mouth. The like slop that they're spewing. They're doing it because they want to, abuse women in a sense, and that's factually accurate. Like, there is nothing more scary to, like, an empowered woman than a male ally, and of course that's completely correct. And I wish, at least in video games, we had the same kind of reluctance to involve these people in that community, but it is what it is. The sexual dimorphism is real, hypergamy is real, and that will continue. And so why did this relationship take place between this, cheating staff on Jagex and this woman? Because it was advantageous to her. She is, again, doing the same thing she's doing with, her OnlyFans content, with probably her, entire community that she's developed. It's to monetize this difference between the sexualities, and it's a grift. She, like any other girl in a video game, is grifting, probably just to a larger extent than most girls. And it's probably very profitable. It probably pays her bills and then some. Now, I don't have any problem in particular with this, but I would advise the men that are involved in this, remember, they hate you, they hate video games, they're here specifically to take advantage of you. And you have to understand that. It's the same thing with VTubers, if you just look at that, like, and the anime community. Period. They are there to take advantage and monetize of you. Now, if you don't spend any money and just enjoy the content, nothing wrong with that. Just be warned and be aware of what you're doing, and don't be a simp. Don't fall for it. At the end of the day, they can't forcefully take your money, but if you cross them, they can use their body and use, their sexuality to get other people in positions of power to do things to you, and that's what happened to Autoblock. I would argue that because he started to threaten her personal income, she probably took this step to make a drastic attack against him, because he attacked her by opening his own CC and all of that. And, that's all, like, elements that are cute and kind of interesting, but wholly unrelated to the grand scheme of things. But that's the, like, in-depth explanation for why this is happening. And on the simp angle, or this guy, you do not want to be this mod that has done this. He very likely has ruined his entire life over someone that doesn't care about him all that much in the grand scheme of things. Someone that sees him as a useful idiot, a pawn in her schemes. Now, is that right, or is that a nice situation for people to be in? No. But at the end of the day, he's making his own decisions, but let's analyze why his decisions are bad. So we know for a fact now that pretty much any girl involved in a video game is a grift if you know she's female. Like, period. Especially if she's posting selfies or trying to, talk in one of those cutesy voices, use the like emoticons, like it's all just meant to, try and get at least an advantage in the game, in real life, in whatever she wants. She wants something from the people around her. And, no, if the situation was reversed, I would be doing the exact same thing. I would be, of course, why wouldn't you? It's just free social credit and social capital. Anyone would. It's not against them or anything, but the problem is the men that are allowing this to happen to themselves. Like, the fault falls on this Mod Tristram guy, or whatever his name is. Like, at the end of the day, if you are a man and you play video games, or you exist in one of these communities that are a male-dominated space, you need to analyze that most females are grifting. They're trying to take advantage of you in one way, shape, or another. And in this case, this is the end result. They will use you, and they will make you do things that are going to be against your own interest. Now, could their relationship be actually real? Could this guy actually be, some cheating Chad, like, we've got Officer Cliffwood over here, RuneScape PD? Certainly possible. I'm going to doubt it, but, maybe it's real. And maybe, it's a happy love story, some sort of crime emperor, maybe some forbidden romance. Usually that stuff only happens to really lucky dudes or people in novels, and considering all the factors around it, I'm going to severely doubt it, but, I could be wrong, and if so, best of luck to them. You'll be able to tell if this relationship is legitimate if they stick together after all of this blows over, after he, either loses his position of power or he gets moved out of the cheating team or whatever happens to him. Well, and that's going to depend on what, information they reveal from Autoblock and how this all goes down. And if Jagex is smart, they just don't say anything, and they just make some changes internally. And then, a few months down the line, Stella is, dating some other person related to the RuneScape community, and he's left, hopefully not financially burdened by this, but potentially, he could have just ruined his life for, some e-thought. And, it's a tale as old as time at this point on the internet. So let's examine the sins involved, though, in actually what's happening on RuneScape, because I've never gambled, I don't gamble, and I think it's a horrible idea to gamble. Now, why do I say that? I say that because just think about lotto tickets. The bottom 15% of people, the 15% poorest people in the United States, buy 90% of the lotto tickets. Why is that? Well, for one, it's not a winning mindset to gamble, especially when the odds are so bad. Even if you do win, most of the people that do win end up just being poor again very quickly because they don't have any sense about their money. Now, certainly people with sense about their money, they can make differing decisions, but me personally, I, at work, receive, for your birthday every year, a free scratch-off gift card. I donate it to someone else, and I say, don't tell me what the results are, I don't care, because I will just not gamble. Why? It's just not good for you as a person, and it leads to bad financial decisions. At best, you're getting a dopamine hit, and then eventually you will lose. The house will always win in any sort of gambling scenario. That's just how it's built. You're paying, basically, to be entertained, and I think there are much better ways to spend your money for entertainment. For instance, RuneScape, $11 a month. That's like 11 scratch-off cards, or I don't know how much they cost. I don't buy them, obviously, but, RuneScape's free for me because, I liquidated my main, and I have 3,000... I have almost a decade of membership that I threw on this character just for fun. I think it was there was Premier thing or whatever, and it was 20 bonds for a year, so I'm just well, I might as well just buy 10 years of it then. And I did. Don't regret it either. Come at me. But yeah, so gambling is something which is just going to harm you personally if you partake of it, and not only does it harm you personally, but it's a waste of money. It's intentionally tricking yourself into trading dopamine for cash, which the rate is not very good, and it's going to keep you in the bottom percent. If you actually think that there's a chance that you're going to make it rich like gambling, very unlikely. 99.9% of people are not going to, and you're part of the 99.9% of people. Sorry, that's just how it is. I am too. I'm not going to make it rich doing anything. I get a pittance from my dividends every month, and that's how I'm going to sustain myself for the rest of time. And, if you can get in that position, that's great, but, don't expect that some cosmic force in the universe is going to luck you into anything. Gambling it can be addictive because you're, spending dollars for dopamine. And while video games can be addictive, anything involving dopamine can be addictive. Spoilers, including eating, including all of that. It just depends on your resistance to it and how good you are at controlling it. And for instance, maybe this is another topic, a separate topic video about pleasure and dopamine and all of that, but, controlling it and, grinding towards things makes it much more rewarding and much more interesting, is why, you at least get something out of video games, right? Your neurons are firing, you're doing problem solving. Dopamine from gambling is you're just spending money, and, poker and all of that, it's a different story, but you can also just play poker without, spending money. And I get there's an adrenaline aspect to it, but that's the dangerous part about it, right? And when you get into these seedy things and these dangerous things, people get hurt. Like what's going to happen with Odablock because of, he's involved now in this gambling ring or whatever. I think he made a video too about it, streaming it and gambling, all of that. That's fine. You can make whatever content you want, but, I hope, at least for people's sake involved in this, they are learning these lessons that these things do not improve your life. Is his life better because he made that CC, or because he's been, staking a couple bills or whatever they're doing? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. I think, given how entertaining he is, he really doesn't need to, risk life and leg and all of that to be able to make money streaming. He can make a fine living just doing his own thing without a lot of that. If you've ever watched, any of his content, the guy just ekes charisma. I'm extremely jealous. And this is from a Jew coming to a Muslim, so it's, even though I disagree with him on some things, it's still peak compliments. So, we've seen that real world trading is a sin as well. You're, making a pure gaming experience more about finances, and let's be clear here, boosting WoW Arena ruined WoW Arena for me. I used to love WoW Arena before I treated it as a job for, a year. And it just saps all the fun out of it. So you ruin it, and because, I could be fishing in World of Warcraft or whatever, some stupid thing, but at the same time I'm yeah, or I could just go boost right now and be, getting a tangible benefit for my time. And you don't want to make those comparisons when you're playing a video game. It's just not healthy. It's going to make things a lot less fun for you, and it's going to lead to a lot of situations like what's happening with Odablock and Stella and this random cheating team mod. And let's talk about corruption. So corruption happens in every video game, pretty much. Again, it's a benefit to the ORS community that we know about ModJet and about a lot of these past events, and a lot of the corruption, this current case, is probably corruption. I'm going to be honest. It doesn't look good. It's not a good look, as one could say, and there's probably going to be consequences for it. If not in the sales of the game, then, to the people involved in this, hopefully. And, at the end of the day, there's no real good way to phrase it or go about it, right? It's just a sorry situation, but it happens in every single video game. Even on private server WoW, I've seen this happen a million times. On retail, it happens in World of Warcraft. Every video game that has ever been has this kind of drama associated with at least some elements of the community team and all of that. Major corporations are just better at hiding it than smaller corporations, and because of the nature of old school RuneScape, that's why it's so obvious and so evident in this case. That's why we hear so much about it, and that's a credit to the game and a good thing. Don't think this is a unique situation to old school RuneScape or a bash at it. This is human nature. It exists. It's going to happen in any environment, no matter what. You literally can't avoid it, and maybe you shouldn't, because, you have to take the good with the bad. But yeah. It's still a crying shame that things have developed this way and gotten to this point, but, what's the solutions now, right? So we have addressed a set of problems. These are all no bueno type things. These all suck. All right. And the solution, again, is like what I'm doing with my Discord. Links are in the bottom. Maybe I'll make a chat CC. I'll get all of this set up and running when, I don't have a full-time job anymore. But the solution to a lot of these problems is creating mail-only spaces. This sort of, there's certainly cheating and there's certainly gambling in mail-only spaces and, other bad things that happen, but there's no this pervasive element where you're, weaponizing SMV and politics to get people to, randomly go after each other. There's not this dirty taint to it. Oh, and I guess I should address, while I'm here, the whole sex work aspect. So for anyone that says sex work is real work, they're lying. Like, they're just flat out lying. Sex work is very different from real work, and I'm not against it. Let's be clear here. Before you, like, cast me off as a prude, my opinion on sex work is that it should be subsidized like farming. I think that, actual physical kinetic sex work is extremely beneficial to people if you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And yeah, I'm a virgin, I get it. I abstained because I'm working towards hopefully a marriage someday. It's not going to happen. I'm forever alone. I'm not working towards anything really when I lie. That's just a cope. Like, at the end of the day, I'm forever alone. But, sex work, as it should be, subsidized by the government, just like farming is. I would compare it more to farming than an actual job. Like, here in where I live, a lot of cheese is produced, and the government doesn't want farmers to cut back on production to meet consumer demand. Why? Because more food is always better, period. You do not want people starving, right? There is a social incentive to overproduce basic human goods. Housing, another human good. There should be empty houses at any point in time, and more empty houses than people to live in them. Like, we need more houses in America, not less. We need an overabundance of all basic human goods. If you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, just below food and a lot of the other things is intimacy. So I think that while sex work is not real work in a sense, if your boss asks you for a coffee or to prepare some report about something, that's a job. If your boss asks you for a favor or some sort of gratification, that's something completely different. And even the people that say sex work is real work would accept that. So, if we're addressing OnlyFans and such, I think it's a social evil. I think it's just taking advantage of simps, and, I'm someone that really enjoys ASMR. Like, I don't watch actual pornography or anything like that. I never have. It's just never been something I enjoyed. It's really nasty to me. It's just gross. Like, in every description of the word, it's gross. The people that watch it will admit it's gross, but they've been conditioned by society to think that what happens on that is somehow acceptable. But I digress on that. That's another topic. But so I think as far as sex work goes, it should be subsidized by the government, just like farming. There should be an overabundance of it, and sex workers should have a certain set of rights. Now, kinetic sex work or actual physical sex work, I think, would be beneficial to society as a whole to accept, and I think it's had a net positive, especially for like the people involved in it, as far as like the disease rate and just how cleanly they are when the government is involved in that. It's got regulations associated with it, and I think that would improve things just in general for the whole field. It's the oldest profession for a reason. It's going to exist. There is no debate about that. In one form or another, like, even relationships, when you get down to it, are just an exchange of currency for sexual intimacy between a man and a woman. Now, the rates and what's going about that and, the other factors, yeah, sure, but at the end of the day, if the man is higher in SMV than the woman, the man is trading his status in SMV for intercourse with the woman. If the woman, is equal to the man, he is trading, his currency and his position to the woman for access to it. And if the man is lower, he has to trade a lot of currency and a lot more. And the difference between them is usually going to be how much he has to trade. That's just the basics of relationships. You can, fret about it, but that's human nature. And when you start porting that into a video game, you get awful situations like what's happening here. So as far as like sex work goes, I think we need to have an overabundance of it in every possible shape, size, and form. Highly regulated, with people protected, with increased government safety and oversight, just like you would farming. Just like how we tightly regulate crops and what enters in our food supply and our water supply, and all of that. And yeah, I know it's for extra government overreach, but it is a basic human need, and for basic human needs, we need to have basic human standards. I think that's an acceptable point where we can go, and I would like to see as much oversight applied to sex work in the future as farming. And farming isn't a real job either. Let's be clear here. The government will just buy any excess that farmers produce, just so they're incentivized to produce as much as humanly possible. And that's perfectly fine, but that's not a real job. It's contributing a lot to society, just like sex work is. But at the end of the day, it's a completely different frame of understanding that level of work compared to, other things. And sure, you can hire someone to pick berries, and you can say, well, that's a real job, but, you're nitpicking here. We're talking about the the grand scheme of things. Like, you can hire someone to put on a skirt and dance, but that's technically sex work too. But I digress. I'll get on all sorts of autistic tangents if we continue. So let's at least try and keep things laser focused. And by laser focused, I mean sweeping broadly across the huge societal topics that this video has gone over. But yeah, so those are my thoughts, at least, on the whole drama, why it exists, and what can be done. And the solution is creating male-only spaces, getting women out of video games, at least for your own personal enjoyment. Like, if you're someone that's a thinker and you want you've experienced at least the preferential treatment women get in video games just because there are so few of them, then you know that it's not going to benefit any organization to have mixed, disproportionate genders in it. And that is just factually true. Even in like STEM fields, I'm sure I don't have any females where I work, but I'm sure in places where it's like STEM field heavy, the few female nerds there like receive an exorbitant amount of attention. I'm sure via ESG and all of that, they're receiving all sorts of benefits just to it. And it's just not a good position to put your community in when you start associating that. So that's why, the solution, again, it's the same solution to fighting the dead internet theory, is to get communities of like-minded people and to start breaking off and downsizing things. And the future of the internet is in the downsized, in the small communities, in the elusive clubs, if you will. And I'm fully ready for that, and I'm hoping you guys are going to move towards smaller internet clubs and getting away from all of this too. And disassociate yourself if you're part of this like gambling Discord. It's not good for you. You're wasting your real life money. Because gold, at the end of the day, can be transferred. If you're not an iron meme like me, it can be transferred to real life money. It's not good. I've never done it in this game. I never probably will, because I enjoy this game too much. Like, I learned my lesson in World of Warcraft not to do it, and I don't plan to do it, here. Like, that ruined a part of WoW for me, and I never recovered my enjoyment from it because I associate it now with, X amount of dollars per minutes, like, worked, instead of, oh, hey, dopamine. But, I'm thinking about dollars instead of dopamine. So this was a really long talk, but I think I analyzed pretty much everything related to this. How to fix it, how to escape it, and, for all the people involved, I wish them the best of luck. I disagree with, the way pretty much everyone in this situation has gone through it. They're all, like, not ideal actors, but, hopefully the people that are watching from the outside learn from this, and, yeah, keep them away, we'll say that much. Begone X, and, it is what it is. Hopefully there's a redemption story for Odablock, and hopefully the mod, whatever, he can work something out with his corporation, or they work out, and hopefully Stella finds, her other forms of monetization in her life, and continues to exist without, having to go about circumventing the game rules, or, trying this, like, monopolistic or venture capitalist shenanigans. Like, yikes. But yeah, that's that. You guys have a good day. That's my thoughts on it.